to the right of your screen, you have a dashboard there, and then down towards the bottom there's a little button that says questions. It's got like a little plus sign. If you just click on that, a little box will come up. You'll be able to type your questions in. I will answer them at the conclusion of today's webinar. I typically don't like to answer questions in the middle. It just sort of chops up the webinar a little bit, so I'm going to do that at the end of the webinar. So I will take your questions when we are complete here. So to the guests of the Mike Harris Radio Show, welcome. Had a number of you that are joining us this afternoon. A number of you joined us from this morning. For those that don't know, Mike Harris has a radio show here in Los Angeles. I'm on KFWB News Radio on Saturday mornings at 11 o'clock. And he typically gives us, 3 to 5 minute plug, just talking about investment real estate, encourages people to join this webinar. In many cases, we have guests on this webinar with me. I've been doing these webinars since late 2009, early 2010, so a little over 4 years now. I've been doing this, and I've had a number of different guests on. These are just a few of them that I've had on. Summit Assets Group, REO Reseller, Robinhood Financial. I can announce today that I did schedule 4 webinars with with Accuplan. If you have a 401k or a self-directed IRA and are considering investment real estate inside that structure of your 401k or self-directed IRA, those webinars are extremely informative. I would encourage you to join those. Brian Davis with Accuplan will be joining me. I believe they start September 5th. We haven't ironed out the exact times yet. It's starting September the 5th. We're going to do 4 with Accuplan in September. Yes, I've been a guest twice on Real Estate 360. It's a radio show carried up in San Francisco on the Wall Street Journal Radio Network. It's a show for, what else? Real estate investing. And I was asked on a couple of times. I was invited simply because the host had been on one of my webinars. They heard what we're going to be talking about today, not this presentation, obviously, but they heard what we were doing, and that we were working primarily with third-party administrators like Accuplan, Direct Entrust, a few of those guys. And she also knew that I was also working with hedge funds. I was working with institutional buyers. So she said, that'd be a really interesting thing to talk about. What's the difference between the hedge fund buyer and the smaller buyer looking to buy a investment property, for their retirement portfolio? And really, fundamentally, there isn't a lot of differences. But the good part of it is that because I do work with some of those larger buyers, like Havenbrook, Property Direct, because I do that, I get some insight into how they see the market. And that's good information to have and great information for me to share with all of you because, they pay people lots of money to sit in rooms and analyze markets and understand where the best place to invest their money might be. So because I've done that, they've asked me on to be a guest a couple times. I'm actually going to be a guest on again in late October. So, for those of you that don't know me, that's sort of what I do. I help people find the right piece of investment real estate for their portfolio, whether it be somebody wanting to buy one property or buy, in the case of some of these funds, as many as 200 per month. Yes, it is true. I've been reading a lot of stuff the last couple of days. I am going to probably change this up next week. We'll be talking about financing again next week, but I'll probably have some additional information. Yeah, we're on bubble watch in a lot of markets. There's a number of markets now that are considered to be extremely overvalued. The market is rebounding. I talked a moment ago about some of these institutional buyers and what they do with regards to their investment strategy, and that's probably not any more important now than it's ever been, because understanding the markets to go into is critically important because some markets are just flat out overvalued. Now, I've been telling this story for 4 years now. For those of you that have been on these webinars in the past, you know that I live in Orange County, California. I'm in Fullerton, California. Most of you know that I've talked about it over the years that, people would say to me, well, Charlie, you're in California. Why are you not offering investment real estate in California? Why is it all outside the state? Well, here's why. Of the most overvalued markets in the United States, 8 of the top 10 are in California. It's the reason why you don't have institutional buyers buying investment real estate in California. That's not to say that you can't get a good flip. There are still some good flips out there. Not so much in Orange County anymore. You have to go out really to San Bernardino, Riverside County. But even that you can see here in that market, that is still 13% over market value. But of the top 10 most overvalued markets in the United States, 8 of them are in California, the only 2 exceptions being Honolulu, Hawaii, and Austin, Texas. Those are the only 2 markets that aren't, in the top 10 at least, that aren't in Southern California. Now, the most undervalued real estate, you'll notice there's a characteristic, by the way. There's only 2 cities. Well, I guess you could consider 3 if you include Cleveland, but there's, Detroit's a fairly large city, Chicago's a fairly large city, but the rest of these places are mainly smaller areas. They're not as populated as the San Francisco, Los Angeles to San Diego, that sort of thing. And if you also notice, for those who have been on our webinars, these are a number of these markets are markets we do business in. We do business in Cleveland. We do business in Detroit. We do business in Memphis. We do business in Toledo. We do business in Chicago. So, and we do some business in Florida too. Florida is a moving target. We've never been able to settle into any sort of a rhythm in Florida because it's all over the place. Some markets there are overvalued. Some are undervalued. Some markets there are extremely depressed. Some are the complete opposite. So Florida is kind of an interesting market, but some of these other areas they'll look familiar to you. These are markets that we have focused a lot of our attention in. Why? Hedge fund buyers buying those markets. That's number one. I actually, interesting conversation, in the last week I've had an individual I've known for a number of years in this business has started his own fund. He's going to be buying and flipping properties to hedge funds, and he called me up and he said, what markets did you go into? And I said, you go into the markets where they're already at and buying inventory. Why? Because if you buy a piece of investment real estate in the markets where these guys are buying it, if you want to get out for any reason, you've got a, excuse me, I didn't shut my phone off. I really apologize. And I have a brand new iPhone because I don't know how to shut it off, so just forgive that ringing here. So the markets that the hedge funds are in are the markets that you want to be in. And the reason for that is that there's a number of reasons. But number one, you know if you want to get out, that you can get out. If you know that if because they're in that market, that the values of those markets are going to continue to stay strong. And then finally, there's a reason why the hedge fund guys are in those markets. They're in those markets. I'm going to shut my phone off now. Let's stop ringing. They're in those markets because those markets are the markets that are going to appreciate. Those are the markets that are going to continue to climb in value. That's why they're in those markets. They pick the markets that are still way below the previous peak. They stay out of places like Southern California and Austin, Texas, and Honolulu. They stay out of those areas because there's no room for appreciation. There's no room to grow. So that's why you want to be close in those markets. Okay, so I got this off of Forbes about 2 weeks ago. I liked it. I'm going to use it today. So this is 3 reasons why real estate can be a great investment. And by the way, when you talk to the hedge fund guys, the institutional buyers, and you ask them why they're so bullish on real estate, the easy answer is just simply that's the best place to put your money in America today. It's the safest place. There's a strong rental market. Values are at historically low numbers. Tons of room for appreciation. It's a commodity. It's not a paper asset that can go away overnight. If you buy under market value, which we're going to talk about today, then it can be an excellent investment in terms of how it can grow. And even if there's a hiccup in the market, like we had in third quarter of 2013 when the government shut down, prices did go down. But for those that bought under market value, you're still way below. If you're still below the value of the property and you lose 3 or 4% because there's some sort of downturn in the economy, you're still protected from that. So that's how the hedge fund guys see it. So 3 reasons why you may consider it. Number 1 is ROI. We're going to talk about ROI in a couple different slides today, but return on investment is so incredibly important. Depending upon the market you're in, well, you can get anywhere from a 4 to 6% rate of return, cash on cash, yearly rate of return. You know, in markets like Phoenix or Las Vegas or Atlanta, 4, 5, 6, 7%. But if you buy in the right markets, like some of the markets that we showed in that previous slide, you should always be at least 10% ROI. And I'm going to show you some examples today, obviously. But return on investment is really the number 1 reason why you consider buying investment real estate. Number 2, you want to stay away from the higher risk investments. And I love this piece of it. One of the reasons I kept this article. But all real estate is extremely high risk. Development of real estate, land, tenant and common investments, private real estate funds, fixer-uppers, etc., all have a much higher risk profile than just simply buying a nice established cash flow investment property. Man, I couldn't have said that any better myself. I've been telling people for the last really for the last 8 or 9 months in particular, the best deal, I've seen a lot of different deals pass through this market the last 5 years, but the best deal, without any question, is the home that's rehabbed, rented, and cash flowing. When you find something like that, you take so much of the risk out of it in terms of what needs to be done to the property. Typically, when you get a home that's been recently rehabbed, you're going to get a 1-year warranty on everything that was rehabbed in the property. So you're going to get a 1-year warranty across the board. In some cases, they'll guarantee the rent for 12 months. So buying something like that makes much more sense than doing something that's got an element of risk to it. And we've seen so many of the flip things that we thought looked pretty secure, but a couple of things that can go wrong in that, and all of a sudden it's not such a great investment anymore. And then finally is property management. And we're going to talk about property management in a couple different places today, but I'll just to shorten it up for the purpose of this slide, your property management being in place is critically important to your success, and it's not difficult to do either. As a matter of fact, in most turnkey properties, the couple that I'm going to profile today, the property management's already in place. It's already there. It's already managing the property for a tenant. But having a property manager is so important because this really should be mailbox money for you. You know, money that you get every month in your checking account or back into your 401k or in your mailbox, however you choose to have that money flow to you. But that really is what it should be. It should be no issues, no hassles. That's what it should be. And when it's completely finished, rehab, renting, cash flowing, that's generally what you're going to be purchasing. And so we get asked a lot, you know, did we miss the market? And I had a gentleman on, he's not on today. He actually has an offer on one of the houses that you're going to see here in a few slides. He's been on these webinars since 2010 and is still kicking the tires. And there's nothing wrong with that. I love my time spent with him. He's a bright guy. He's out of New York City. He's being cautious, and he should be cautious. But he's, you know, he's one of those, hey, is it too late now? Has prices gone up too much? I think 2014 is going to be the best year to buy. And I'm going to give you some things, reasons as to why I believe that to be true. But we believe fully that 2014 really is the best time to buy. Yeah, we're 6 years past the crash, but for a whole lot of reasons that we'll talk about, this really is the best time to invest. This is from Bloomberg, just from a few months ago. 77% of investors with at least $1 million in real estate or in assets own real estate, and that they consider that to be the #1 alternative investment pick for 2014, with a third of millionaires surveyed saying they plan to buy this year. And then wealthy investors, again out of Bloomberg, turning to rebounding real estate as fixed income yields remain historically low and equity surge, buy low, sell high. That's the way they see it. You can get in, you can get great deals, and you can watch the market appreciate, all the while earning a good solid 10, 12, 13% cash on cash. Now, interesting, now talking about why we believe 2014 is going, and it really has been. We're 7 months into the year now. This has been my best year in this business. This is from credit.com. For the year 2013, 44% of all sales were purchased with no loan recorded at the time of the sale. In other words, they were purchased with cash. That's a 33% increase from 2012. Now, I don't know what the statistics are for 2014 yet, but I guarantee it, the bulk of the money coming into the real estate market is not owner-occupants. It's investors that are buying real estate because they recognize a down market and an opportunity to buy in markets that are going to continue to appreciate with extremely high rates of return. So that just sort of gives you an idea what the investment community thinks of real estate. And then Prudential Real Estate, if you don't know about Prudential, Prudential was sold to Warren Buffett in October of 2012. And Warren Buffett, you may know, was famously interviewed on MSNBC back in April of, I think, 2011. And they asked him about, hey, do you think investing in the housing market's a good idea? And he said, man, I'd buy millions of them if I could, but I'm not very handy. And what he meant by that was that to do this, you need to have a wholesaler find you the house, a property manager to take care of it for you. You got to have, ties to a contractor in case something breaks, or a plumber if the toilet backs up. So what does Warren Buffett do? Well, he went out and he bought Prudential Real Estate. It's now called Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. If you just Google Warren Buffett and just read his comments on what he sees in the real estate market, he will tell you that he believes real estate is the best place to put your money. As a matter of fact, a lot of the larger hedge fund buyers tell you the same thing. They're just the best place to put your money for a whole bunch of reasons, some of which I mentioned a few minutes ago. Okay, so 7 tips for the smaller investor. We're going to get into some very specific properties here and what you came here to listen to today, which is about how you can finance your next deal. But 7 tips as to what you may consider to be a strategy for you as you look to buy investment real estate. So number 1, actually the first 3 here sort of go hand in hand. I'm going to do them all at the same time. I said this earlier. You have to buy below market value. If you're not buying below market value, then you're just making a mistake. To do that, you have to buy direct from the selling party, and you can't buy anything that's on the MLS. If you're buying it on market, you're not going to get the best deal. If you want to sell your property, you might consider putting it on the MLS because you get a better price for it. But if you're going to buy a house for an investment, you don't want to buy it on the MLS. You want to buy it directly from a wholesaler. We'll talk about what that looks like in a second. You want to buy it directly from a wholesaler. You don't want to buy it on the market or on the MLS, and you want to buy it directly from the selling party. No middlemen, no double escrows, no markups taking away from your ROI. You want to buy it direct from the selling party. Number 4, ROI. Already mentioned that. You want to look for both ROI and appreciation. The best place to invest, where all the hedge fund guys invest, they invest in markets where they know the market's going to continue to climb. There's appreciation in that market. And by the way, they measure that by what was the previous peak and where's the market at now. And when they see spreads of 20, 30, 40% below the previous peak, that's where they want to go. I read an article this morning that said we will hit the peak of 2007 in 3 to 5 years. Now, I've read that. The reason I didn't use that piece, by the way, it was a great piece, was by, it was written by Zillow. And I was going to put it on, and I thought, you know, there's so many crystal balls you can rub out there with regards to when we're going to get back to the previous peak. I've heard, well, this article is 3 to 5 years, so they're saying basically, you know, 2019 to, you know, 2022. I've heard 2025. I mean, you hear all kinds of people's projections of when it will get back to the previous peak. But the point is, there is a peak, and we're not there yet, and everyone has concluded that we're going there. When we get there, we don't know, but we're going back to where we once were. I mentioned property management a couple times already. I don't want to beat that to death, but having your property management in place is critically important. Know your strategy. Do I want to do a flip? Do I want to do a long-term buy and hold? What's my strategy? I will tell you, just for what it's worth, of all the funds I've dealt with in the last 4 years, there's only one that flips. Everybody else is a hold model. Everybody's model is a buy and hold model. At least 3 years you want to hold it. And the reason for that is, why would you sell something that's going up in value? If it's going up in value, hold it. You don't sell it. But your strategy is your strategy. And then finally, you want to look for stuff that's fully rehabbed and rent ready or rented. I prefer it to be fully rehabbed and rented. The ones I'm going to show you are fully rehabbed and rented. But if they're fully rehabbed, that's okay too. If you're just waiting for a tenant to be installed, that's okay. The only sort of moving target you have with something like that is if it's not rented, you really don't know what it's going to rent for. So in other words, you buy something for $50,000, you project it's going to rent for $750,000, but it only rents for $700,000. Your ROI is not going to be what you might have expected. Conversely, if you buy something that's already got a tenant in there, it's on a 12 or 24-month lease, you know what your ROI is going to be. So my suggestion is always buy it fully rented and rehabbed, or at least fully rehabbed and rent-ready condition. Now, I mentioned a wholesaler. I mentioned one of the strategies that you might consider is, you know, buying it direct from a wholesaler. I think it's important that I draw a picture of what that looks like, because a lot of folks, you know, they sort of think the wholesaler looks like the guy in the suit, right? That guy looks like, to me, a realtor, right? That's what a realtor would look like. It's not the guy in the suit. A wholesaler is a guy that's in a market. He's lived in the market for quite some time. He understands the market. He understands the schools. He knows the crime rates. He knows what that house is going to rent for. He knew what that house sold for in 2008. He knows what it'll be valued at in 5 years from now. He knows what he can buy it for. He knows what he can rehab it for. That's a wholesaler. That's somebody that goes out in the streets and finds the best deals, rehabs the properties themselves, and then makes them available to you. Historically, those wholesalers worked for specialized REO groups. What are they? Those are companies that came into existence when the market crashed, and they were groups that bought real estate and sold them to people like you, and there was nothing wrong with that. If you could get a 10 or 12 or 13% cap rate on a piece of property, a turnkey piece of property, paying that extra money to a specialized group had some value to it. In 2014, not so much. And the reason for that is you now as a buyer can get access to the same people that sell to hedge funds and larger institutional buyers. You can buy directly from them. What does that do? It brings your price down. There's no middleman that's marking it up. What does that mean? It means you get a higher rate of return. And so people ask me, I've had a number of people on these webinars the last month, and they said, Charlie, I'm seeing cap rates in some of these areas that are, you know, 13, 14, 15, 16%. Makes no sense. If the value of the properties are going up, how can the cap rates be going up? Shouldn't they be going down? And I said, well, you're absolutely right. That's true. But the reason the cap rates are going up is because you're not buying it through a middleman anymore. You're buying it directly from the party who's selling it. So the price is lower. The cap rates are going up. Again, I talked earlier about why 2014 is one of the best times to buy. This is one of the reasons. The individual investor can get access to the same inventory that those large institutional buyers can get. So what we did was, about 6 months ago, Connor Ercolano, one of my partners, started a website called IncomePropertyHQ.com with the vision of it being simply a wholesaler's marketplace, a place where wholesalers could go and post their properties and could give access to those properties to people like you, people looking to buy a piece of investment real estate. You could go to this site, and you can get a look at what's available on the market. Now, I will tell you that since we began that process, that we've posting new stuff has sort of slowed down a bit. And the reason for that is we've gotten to know a lot of the people and what they're looking for. So when we see stuff that fits their criteria, they usually just get a phone call. We don't usually even have to go post it to the website. But there is inventory up there. Notice the markets. These are the markets that we're in, and these are the markets that the hedge fund guys are in. A number of these markets, obviously, were the markets that were listed on that slide. Detroit, Toledo, and Memphis, three of the most undervalued areas in the United States. Now, why would we be there? Because they're undervalued. The hedge funds are there because they're undervalued. Why would you want to go into those markets? Because they're undervalued. And it's really one of the things. There's a misnomer about buying out-of-state real estate. But one of the things that we've talked about for a number of years now is why would you invest in a Birmingham, Alabama versus a San Jose, California? I live in Orange County. Wouldn't it be better for me to invest in La Habra or Anaheim? In actuality, the answer is no, because the fact is, just look at the numbers. Now, I'm going to slide through this one quickly, but just look at the top number. This is what a home is going to sell for in San Jose versus Birmingham. You can see the rent's quite a bit different, $2,500 for San Jose and $960 for Birmingham. But look at the difference in the cash-on-cash rates of return. In California, you're looking at 3%, and that's about right, 3, 4, 5%. Those are the caps. And then in a Birmingham market, you're looking at 15%. There's a huge difference with regards to return on investment. That's the reason why the hedge fund guys, they look to buy it in these smaller markets. They don't look at real estate as an emotional purchase, like you're going to live in the house. They look at it like it's just simply an investment. It's just about numbers. So the misnomer is, the myth is that it's got to be in your own backyard. If the real estate's not in my own backyard, it can't be a good deal for me, and there's just nothing further from the truth. I've mentioned property management 3 times now. It's critically important. The property management is going to equate to a higher performance. They can absolutely do it better than you can, and they're going to charge you less for it. You're going to pay less out in fees, then you're going to save more than what you're going to pay out in fees, is what I'm trying to say. What they're going to charge you, typically 8 to 10% per month to manage your property for you, is an investment well spent, because they're going to take better care of your property because they're professionals. And there's less hassle factor. I mentioned that earlier. Your ROI should be zero hassle. It should just be cash flow in your account every month. Now, when you deal directly with a wholesaler or any type of a specialized group in any market, there's got to be an investment checklist with regards to what you're looking for in that particular individual you're going to buy from. First of all, you got to make sure you're buying in the right part of the country. Excellent investment characteristics. And by the way, that's not hard to do. If you spent 2 hours on the internet and you wanted to research Birmingham, Alabama, or Memphis, Tennessee, or Toledo, Ohio, if you wanted, you could do that yourself, and you could find out all you needed to know about that market in terms of its value, in terms of investing in real estate. It's not hard to find. You don't want to look for cheap properties. Inexpensive does not always mean good value. Now, I will tell you, there's a few markets that you can still get into for less than $35,000 and get really good values. Birmingham is one of them. I'm going to actually show a couple of those in a little bit. Toledo, Ohio is another one. Cleveland's another one. Detroit is another one. You can do that, but when I say cheap properties, I'm talking about cutting corners, not doing good work in the rehab to the property, things like that. You want to stay away from that stuff. You want to make sure they're a turnkey operator. Turnkey just simply means it's done. The property's done. It's finished. It's got a tenant in it. It's cash flowing. It's performing. I think I've mentioned property management now 4 or 5 times. It's important, folks. I can't say it enough. Property management's really important, but again, it's not a mystery in 2014 either who the good ones and the bad ones are. I mean, clearly in any market that we're in, we're going to tell you who the best property management team in town is, and usually the wholesaler that's sold the property has already got that property management team already in place, taking care of the property. I'm going to show you what a high-quality renovation looks like in a few slides, but it's really important that you work with whoever the wholesaler is, that they provide for you excellent quality renovations. And make sure they've got at least 5 years experience in the market. You don't want to be buying stuff off people that have been in the market for 6 months because they haven't learned the market yet. You want to talk to seasoned professionals who know what they're doing. And then finally, when I say high integrity, that means, can you show me 5 people you sold a house to that's performing, that they're happy with you? You should always ask for references. And then lastly, transparency in numbers. I'm going to do that in a few minutes. I'm going to show you what transparency in numbers looks like in a few slides here. So I'm just going to spotlight one city only to give you an idea of why or what a hedge fund buyer or a hedge fund manager looks for when they look into a particular market. So for example, in Birmingham's case, CNN Money says that it's now the 8th best overall real estate market in the country, and it's the 3rd fastest growing real estate market in the nation. New Wire Investor did a study of the top 10 best cash flow markets in the U.S., and Birmingham was 3rd. And you'll see why in a minute. I'm going to show you some Birmingham ROIs, and you'll see why. They've spent over $1 billion revitalizing their city, the downtown as well as the schools and the parks and the roads. Real estate continues to be a strong market there. There's still 2 hedge funds buying that market, Havenbrook Homes and Blackpool, so that hedge funds recognize, and this is the kind of stuff they look for. They look for stuff like this. CNN Money says 10 hottest housing markets for 2014, Birmingham's number 8. That's the kind of stuff they look for. Forecast gains through September this year, 7.8%. So a nice little clip. It did 12% gain in 2013. I haven't looked lately what we've done so far in 2014, but it's probably somewhere in that same ballpark. There was a hedge fund that left Birmingham about 10 days ago. What that did was it created some extra inventory. When I mentioned, markets where you can buy around that $35,000 number, I did some advertising on this a couple weeks ago, and I had some really good response to it. Yeah, I mean, you could buy a $700 rental for $36,000, a 17.6% rate of return. A rental at $663 for $34,000. I mean, those are numbers you have not seen in probably 2 or 3 years. I mean, these types of homes were selling for $42,000 to $49,000, which again was okay. A middleman would buy it, sell them to you for $44,000 to $49,000. You still get a 10, 11, 12% cap rate, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. Still a great return. But when you buy it directly from a wholesaler or somebody that owns the house, this is actually one company called the Epic Company. They've got 24 rentals like this they've recently put on the market. They've asked me to profile them. But that gives you an idea what you can get. I mean, 219 67th Street, renting for $663 a month at $34,000, an 18.5% rate of return. So those properties are available in certain markets. Okay, now, what most of you came here for today, we're now working with a lender. Now, most of you know, and I see a number of names here that I recognize this afternoon, that for 4 years now that I've been doing these webinars, the question I get asked the most is, do you have financing available? And the answer I give the most would have been, no, there's no financing available. And the reason for that was we were never able to find any non-recourse lender who we felt comfortable with, not enough to at least refer them out to anybody. So we've looked for finance folks. We have not been able to come up with something that we felt comfortable with until we found this group here. They're a little bit unique, and I'm going to talk about how they're doing it, but first I'm going to talk about their terms and conditions, okay? We'll do that first. It's a 50% down. There's a 5% loan origination or processing fee, and most of you will know that all the non-recourse lenders generally charge about 10%. So I was really pleased to see that number only at 5. It's a 9% interest-only loan for 5 years. You have to set up an LLC or IRA, which is not a big deal. We had a gentleman on our call on Tuesday who is doing that now to do one of these properties. It's not that expensive. I would put him in touch with a lawyer in Birmingham as well as Brian Davis over at AccuPlan. He'll find the best one. Will it be an LLC and IRA? I'm not sure what he's going to do yet, but it's not complicated to do that, but you need to have that set up. To qualify, this is another thing I liked about this lender, is you need to have a name, you need to have an address and a phone number and an email address. That's it. It's an asset-based loan. And what I liked about this was this lender, successful group out of Portland, will only loan on properties that are under market value. And he'll only finance homes built or rehabbed by certain individuals. In other words, they have to meet a pretty lofty criteria to be able to finance these properties. And I'll show you what these things look like here in a second. I don't mind telling you who it is. It's Justin Harrison, Premier Equity Group out of Birmingham, Alabama. That is the builder of these homes. He's the owner. He does all the rehab work. I'll show you some photographs in a minute. Again, the lender will only loan on stuff that's under market value. Justin's pretty confident this house here is worth somewhere in the 60s. We're offering it at $49,900. It has to be appraised. And so for those of you that are on the call that know anything about an appraisal, you know that if you're going to have a house appraised and it appraises for what we're selling it for, it's under market value because the appraisers are extremely conservative. And so whatever it's being sold at, we know, we're confident it's actually worth more than that. What does that mean for you? It means you're going to get a property under market value. That's what it means for you. So this is 1865 St. Charles Court. It's already rented at $769 a month. There's your taxes and insurance. Your asking price is $49,900. The ROI at 14.6 is calculated including a 10% management fee built into that. So that 14% ROI is your net number The only other thing you can factor into that, if you wish to, you could probably factor in something for maintenance, maybe $50 a month or $25 a month or whatever for maintenance. So the down payment on $49,900 is $24,950. You're going to pay points of $1247. So your interest-only payment each month is $187, leaving you with a net cash flow of $401 a month. So your ROI, when you calculate a $400 cash flow a month against a $25,000 down payment, your ROI is 19% on your cash that you've invested. Those are pretty strong numbers on a house that you're leveraging through finance, and you've got a partner coming in who's picking up half of the cost of that property. You're going to have a balloon payment in 5 years. This is true. Somebody asked me the question the other day, so what happens in 5 years? Then what do? You owe the lender $25,000. So this is what I did. I did a very simple calculation. There's a number. Now, I talked to a number of people that have already done this, by the way. I didn't do this without asking for references of people who have done this. So this is generally what they do. They're going to sell it at 5 years. However, there's a couple other strategies. I'll talk about that in a second. There's a couple other ways to handle it. But you're paying interest only at 9% for 5 years. At the end of 5 years, you sell it. So what I did is I calculated at a very conservative 5% appreciation year on year. That would make the house worth $63,000 in 5 years. Now, we believe that property is probably worth closer to that right now. But let's just say conservatively, you only sell it for $63,000. That's 5% year-on-year appreciation, really conservative number. You sell it in 2019 for $63,000. You pay back the loan amount of $24,950. That leaves you a balance of $38,000. You invested $24,950, so you got all your money back. Your profit and appreciation was $13,000. So over the 5-year period of the property, you not only paid off the loan, but you earned $13,000 in appreciation. Plus, you had 5 years of rental income at $400 a month. So you put $24,000. And let's say it's only $22,000. Say you had some maintenance along the way. It's going to be a little bit less than that, obviously, but you're going to have $24,000 in cash flow over a 5-year period. So now I did want to do those rates of return because they're really powerful. You can do those yourself. Obviously, you own the home for 5 years. You're getting 20% of the money you invested. You sell it. You make another $13,000 in profit. You get the original money you had out. The other way to do it is to keep it. You pay the lender out yourself, the $25,000. You own the house outright. Maybe you get a loan. Take a second out in the home that you live in. You take $24,000. You pay off the house in Birmingham. And you keep cash flowing it. Your $401 a month cash flow goes up to almost $570 a month, and you got extremely good cash flow. In a house you bought for $49,000, it's going to continue to go up and appreciate and climb in value. So that's how it would look. Now there's another one. I'm sorry. Let me show you the rehab work first. I want to give you a sense. I talked about quality renovations. This is what quality renovations looks like. This is stuff that's been done by a professional construction team, and you can see it looks brand new in and out. Typically, Justin guts these houses. He does a great job of taking them apart and rebuilding. Yeah, he does warranty all the stuff that's in here for a year or two. So anything he's rebuilt or replaced or whatever is going to be warranted for the first year. But that gives you an idea of what the quality of the workmanship looks like. Now, there's a higher end model. Now, this is a little bit different. The numbers are a little bit different on this one. This is 1612 Barrington Lane. It's renting for $800 a month. By the way, both these properties are already rented. Now you're looking at photos that are vacant. These photos were taken when the house was done being rehabbed. There's already tenants in both of these. This property is $800 a month. You got your taxes and insurance. The asking price is $69,000. So the rate of return is a little bit less, 10.7%. So you put your down payment down to $34,500. You pay your points, 5%. Your interest each month is $258.75. So your net cash flow is $351, and so your ROI on the $35,000 that you invested, you put down, is about 12.2% per month. Now the cash flow is less than this than it was in the lesser price house. However, there's bigger equity in this one. Justin's comp, I got a note down here at the bottom that house is going to appraise in the mid $80,000. So you're buying that at $69,000. It's going to appraise in the mid $80s. So you're walking with a lot of equity. So the cash flow is a little bit less, but over a 5-year period of time, if I did those same numbers on this one, you're going to get more cash out at the end than you would on the other one. So this one, a little bit less cash flow, higher equity in the property walking in the front door. The first one, lower cost of entry, $49,900. Better cash flow. Not quite as much on the back end when you sell the property. So there's two different types of models. Now it's important to point out, I'm not going to get many of these. I'm only going to be able to get properties from this particular lender that he approves, and obviously he's approving it based upon the quality of the product. We're thinking we can get probably 2 to 4 per week, so it's not huge numbers. The first property I showed, I already have an offer on that, a full cash offer of $49,900. He has not set up his LLC yet, so until he sends me in his paperwork, we don't have a deal until it comes in, but I do have an offer on that property. And again, you get an idea of the type of workmanship that went into the property. This is just a couple photos on the outside and the inside, but this is the kind of work that Justin from your Equity Group does. And again, the reason why this lender is willing to loan money, 50% of his money, on properties like this. So that's my presentation today. I did that in 40 minutes, so I want to thank you for being here. I'm going to take questions down. There was a couple questions that came in while I was talking. And so I'll do those first, but if you've got questions, you can type them into your queue there. I'm glad to answer them for you. I'm going to leave my information up on the screen as well. If you want to give me a call, I'd love to talk to you. I always leave my afternoons open after I do these webinars. The first question has to do with a self-directed IRA, or no, excuse me, I'm sorry, an IRA or an LLC, and that is the cost to set those up. I didn't ask that question. I didn't ask that question. I don't know what the cost is. I think to set up an IRA is about $250. I think that's right. And if anybody's on the phone, I see somebody on that might know the answer to that question. If you can type that in and give me the answer, I can let everybody know what that is. I think it's about $250. For an LLC, it's probably, to set up an LLC, it's probably, I don't know what it is. I'd have to ask. Let me get back to that. I recognize the person who asked me the question, but let me get back to you. It can't be, I know it's not a huge number. I think an IRA is about $250. An LLC probably is a little more than that. Because if you don't have your own attorney, you probably got to hire an attorney in Birmingham, for example, to do that. But it's not a huge cost. Next question is, okay, the next question is, can you purchase this property using your 401k plan? Yeah, the answer is that they prefer that. They actually, and you can buy it. Can you purchase it within the body of the 401k? Absolutely, you can. That's what and I'm not sure it's the reason why they prefer that, but they prefer it to be in an LLC, 401k, or a self-directed IRA. Okay, I got one more here, and then that's it. It looks like. Okay, are there any other additional fees involved? Okay, yeah, actually there is. I should have mentioned that. If you want your money to be directly deposited into your bank account every month through the management company, they charge $250 to set that up. There's also a fee to do the appraisal, which is split between between you and with the lender. So you're going to get a full appraisal on it, which is really what you want to do anyway. I mean, you get a full appraisal, that's awesome. And you'll split that cost. And the appraisals are usually around $300, $350, somewhere in there. So figure half of that is be the other fee. I should have mentioned that. I'll put that on my slideshow for next week. But yes, there are some additional smaller fees that go along with it. But that's it. Those are the only fees involved. The 5% is the loan origination fee. That's the end of it. And that's all the questions I see here. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just hang here for another minute. If anybody's got any other questions, you can just pop them in the queue there. If you want to talk to me, again, just give me a shout. My number's on the screen. My email address is on the screen. If you call me and you get my voicemail, it just means I'm on with the call. I'll be glad I will call you back. And with that, I want to thank everyone for being on here this afternoon. I'm going to stop the recording.